Okay, I think we are good to go. Welcome, everybody. I am Rebecca Pebble, and this is Musical Musings, the show where I get guests and we talk about all things. Today, I have, he doesn't know it, but he's my favorite ENTP YouTuber. I have Jeffrey from AutoAlchemy. Welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it is a pleasure. So today it's interesting. I proposed to Jeffrey that we are going to talk about an album, and I had him send me, I guess it was what, your top 10?
I
Or
think that I just picked an arbitrary number and overloaded you as an ENTP is wont to do.
yes, that's awesome. And so what I did is I started at the top with the first one. Just I was going to listen to every single one, just start at the top, but I started at the top and I stopped at the top because I thought I had never heard this before and it's brilliant. And that album is Jeff Buckley's Grace, which some of you may or may not know, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So before we get started, I kind of want to share with everybody just some little interesting tidbits about the album before we dive deep. It is actually the only studio album by Jeff Buckley. So he created that one, and unfortunately he passed away, I think not too long after, and you can jump in at any time, Jeffrey, and correct me.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because he definitely had a lot of promise, and I think he could have been one of the greats had he had a longer artistic life. But his only one, but thankfully he put out a really good one. And something really interesting about it too is that it was not well received in the beginning. And Jeffrey and I were talking about that before we started, that people just sort of dismissed it and it just got poor reviews. And then as time went along, it became very successful. And it got all kinds of awards and accolades. And so it's kind of inspiring in that way. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rambling.
You are not rambling.
Thank you, thank you. We'll get to the interview, I promise. But I thought for the audience, it might be important to know that sometimes you'll produce something, you'll create something, and maybe you're ahead of your time, and it just isn't well received quite yet. But you never know. You never know, and the tides will turn.
That's my hope with my YouTube channel.
Yeah,
I'm just
right.
slightly ahead of the curve here.
You are. So for all those YouTubers, keep rocking and rolling because you just never know when people finally appreciate your brilliance.
It's true. I have another fun tidbit about the album that I wanted to share before we got to the actual questions.
Yeah.
So weirdly enough, coincidentally enough, we are actually like 10 days away from the 25th anniversary of the album. So there's like a whole re-release with a few more like unheard of like gems being offered up. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be like the 23rd when that comes out.
Maybe I'll have to put this out on the 23rd or around the 23rd.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's just kind of fortunate timing. I didn't even think about it as I like gave you that list. I didn't know about it until I started revisiting the music to prepare for this, actually.
Right, right. Ah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I think we'll jump right in. And I have notes, and for those that watch my channel, you know I never use notes. So this is so if I'm looking down, I feel like a newscaster, you know, with my notes. So the first question, I kind of want to know about you, Jeffrey, your musical tastes, just your thoughts on music in general. Because some people are obsessed, and some people it's like, take it or leave it. So I didn't know where you fell on the spectrum.
Right. Music is kind of something that ebbs and flows for me. So I'll have periods of minor obsession and then I'll get distracted by some other kind of obsession. So it's something that I come back to, but it's not always a permanent fixture in my life. And I think the main thing that I find attractive or appealing about it is that it kind of bypasses my logical faculties in a way that other art forms don't. So I can read a book or go see a film and I can kind of like reason to myself, tell myself a story that will lead me to liking it or disliking it. Like I can learn a new piece of information about the author and what they were intending, and then that can change my entire perception of what I just read or watched. And music, I mean, that can happen to some degree, but my reaction is more instantaneous. Like music kind of just hits you in the body, right? You don't have time to rationalize. You either like it or you don't like it. And for me, it's a lot more fixed than my other tastes can be, if that makes sense. So yeah, I have a weird relationship with music. It kind of baffles my brain. It doesn't like fit neatly into the boxes that I want it to.
Oh, that's interesting. So maybe you said because you feel it, like when it hits you, feel no pain, Bob. But so do you think it's because it's more getting in touch with your feeling side, sort of in a way?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, but I don't think that's all there is to it. Um, because, obviously a good movie can also hit you in the feels if it's, the right kind of movie.
Yeah.
But there's something about music as like vibration and the fact that it's also a sensory experience that can like it can actually shake your body if you're hearing like the bass cranked up. And so, yeah, it's kind of like it's like a possession almost for me as somebody who's more alienated from like the SF perspective. Like I
Yeah.
feel, yeah, very much like it's something that's taking over me and I don't understand it, but I
Mhm.
like the way that it moves through me.
Oh, okay. So it's
Yeah.
like an illogical nature to the enjoyment of it in a way.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm also, I mean, I play music a little bit, but I've never been good enough to be more than a hobbyist. And I think that's because I do take like a very cerebral approach to it. Like
Mm-hmm.
to understand music, I actually like studied music theory and I can like craft a well-composed song, but it might not necessarily give somebody an emotional experience. And so the fact that music in general is just at the cusp of what I can understand, like that's
Yeah.
what gets me coming back to it, but it's also something that like alienates me from it. And I think that's why I'm not always obsessed about music.
Interesting. I have never heard that perspective before. It's really fascinating. It kind of
It's
tells
a
you
weird one.
it's awesome. So it's more like taking the science of music instead of focusing on the art, which is what I think a lot of us do. But really kind of taking that left brain part.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Cool. So tell me your general thoughts on this album in particular, and if you know anything about Jeff Buckley, how you feel about the artist.
Um, okay, so as far as what I actually enjoy and what my tastes are, they're kind of all over the map. So I like a lot of hip hop music because I like wordplay and I like, that is more a natural fit for the way that I think because I like to think about these different commonalities and sounds and like piecing it all together as this puzzle. And then melody and all that stuff, like the grit and the texture of music is harder for me. But I love hip hop for that reason. And then I like more straightforward rock music. I like metal music. I like all these obscure indie artists.
Mm-hmm.
And then I even enjoy pop music. I think that Toxic by Britney Spears is one of the greatest songs of all time.
Fun. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like music is something that I just want to sample. I want to like try a bit of everything and appreciate it when I can, whenever I'm in that mood.
Yeah. Grand buffet of.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. So tell me your general thoughts about the Grace album and Jeff Buckley in general.
Okay, let me collect myself here. Um, so one thing that I appreciate about Jeff Buckley and this album is kind of the mystery around it, and part of it is that story you told earlier about it being his only album and kind of the intrigue of what could have been if he had, continued to release polished studio albums. Um, and I don't know too much about this, so I might be getting some of the details wrong, but basically his father was a kind of like folksy singer-songwriter in the 70s. Tim Buckley, and he abandoned him when he was a child. And somehow, despite that, they both became stars in their own right. And there's like this, like at his father's funeral, he only ever met his father one time, I think, but he went to the funeral and he performed some music and covered some of his father's songs, and that adds like a little more for me to like the myth of who he was, and like this mysterious relationship that he never quite got to resolve. Like that's something that is appealing to me for some reason.
Yeah.
That doesn't say much about like the music or what makes him good, but I do, for whatever reason, I get like wrapped up in that. But as far as like the actual album and what I appreciate about him, um, so there's like this general impression that people have that he is like a crooning singer-songwriter type of guy, and that's definitely part of the identity.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like most about him is that he doesn't really fit into boxes very easily. So on, the first song on the album, there's definitely like an edge to it at times, and it sounds like a Led Zeppelin song in certain places. And there's like a whole part of his persona that I think gets left out. Like when people are talking about him, if they've only heard his cover of Hallelujah, then I think they have like a weird impression of him. And what I like most about him is that he does cover so much ground. I think when he was in high school, he played guitar for a jazz band, and as he was like trying to make it in the world, he was in a metal band and he was in a reggae band. And so he did all of this different stuff, and I feel like you can see that. Like he played in an R&B group and a funk group, and all of that is there kind of under the surface and grace. And it doesn't sound like this hodgepodge though. It
No.
kind of it flows together really well, and he's like taken ownership of all these different parts of what he enjoys. And I don't know, that's the thing that I like most about him and about the album, is like that ability to acknowledge influences but create something new. And I feel like that's something that I want to do, and I think all people should do, is like, love things, love them, take ownership of them, like find a space for them in your own life and cultivate your own unique take on that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's what's really appealing to me about his music, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because when I was listening to this, I was kind of doing it I was trying to do it through your lens, or like an ENTP lens. And for me, the first thing that stood out is, oh my gosh, the variety. And this is, to me, it felt like NE in an album.
Yeah.
Even the structures of the songs, he kind of breaks away from your typical like verse, bridge, chorus, or whatever. It kind of like the first track, like you said, Mojo Pin, it starts one way and you're kind of expecting it to go somewhere, and then it shifts on you suddenly and it's a totally different tonality, but it works. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, and it's like he's taking you on this adventure, and the scenery is constantly shifting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. So in that regard, do you think he is an NE user? I think I'm going to skip to my OP MBTI question here, because I think it's cool. I don't know if you've seen any interviews with him or.
So I was actually trying to type him with Frank James not too long ago, and we weren't really able to narrow it down. But I felt pretty confident, rather, that he is either an INFP or an ISFP. So probably, yeah, quite possibly an NE user. Definitely FI. I feel like that is oozing out of him in his interviews, and he says a lot of like very stereotypical things, actually, for somebody who can't know anything about typology. Like he's just very he always emphasizes like staying true to his voice and not being corrupted by like the corporate machine. He might not use those words exactly, but that theme comes up again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny, because I actually wrote down in my notes ISFP question mark, INFP question mark. That's what I thought too. And I watched a couple interviews, and I thought he's definitely an FI user.
And I was leaning towards at the time FINI, if we're going to talk OP. So that might be why we're seeing a little bit of both of those.
Yeah, yeah. I put Fine, but I could see the Ni.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool that we had the same. And
yeah,
for me, it was mostly just the vibe of the music, and I typed him, and then I watched the interviews, and it kind of confirmed. I was like, okay,
yeah.
yeah. I love that music does that. It's like I can figure you out from your song. So next question. Do you remember when you first heard the album or a song from the album?
Yeah, it wasn't any special day. I was just sitting at home after school in high school and was browsing the internet and I happened upon his cover of Hallelujah and my ears perked up and I thought there's like something really special going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then this kind of segues into one of the other questions that I that I know is on the list,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
uh, it's the only memory that I have really associated with any of the music. So after I listened to it, my girlfriend came over and I had done a little bit of research. So I was like, check out this dude's music. He died at a tragically young age.
Oh, that's romantic.
Yeah, I know, right? And I'm pretty good. Uh, so I showed her the song and uh, she started weeping by the end and thought it was, really beautiful.
Mhm.
And then we had like this touching moment where we like dropped the L bomb for the first time as these like young high school lovebirds who didn't know anything about the world. So yeah, it was a nice like way to maybe that's a reason that I have such a special fondness for his music, but I would never admit that until right now as I'm like working it out aloud.
Yeah. So kind of like first love connection.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a big connection there.
Yeah. I love that when there's something that you can connect the music to from your past like that. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Ah, so is that pretty much, would you say, your biggest memory connected to the album, or are there other memories, or those are pretty much?
Yeah, that's about it. Everything else is like just me sitting in a dorm room enjoying the album or, I don't have any major moments besides that one.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. I guess I could say when I first heard Hallelujah, but it's a downer, so I don't know.
Oh
I don't
no, please. You can
know.
always cut it out.
That is true. No, I hadn't heard it before, but then after, September 11th happened, I remember it played
Oh.
a lot on those like memorials and things on television, and I was like, wow, this is a beautiful, beautiful song.
Mm,
Um, I didn't even know it was a Leonard Cohen
yeah.
cover, but I heard that, and that's kind of all I knew about Jeff Buckley. I don't know that he had any other
Mm,
hits from the album or anything that radio play.
yeah. Nothing that hit that level anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry for that one.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's just the one thing my SI can actually, can
Yeah.
the dark stuff. So speaking of, what are your favorite songs or favorite song? Maybe there's one that you like more than others.
Yeah. Well, we've actually touched on my favorite a little bit. Mojo Pin is actually like for me a clear winner, even though I love all of them to some degree. Uh, and I think it's probably because, like I mentioned, it has like this Led Zeppelin kind of vibe to it in certain places, and Zeppelin was such a formative band for me. So it's really cool to hear him put his spin on that. And, the song starts out very like hypnotic with this like gentle guitar, and then
Mhm.
I feel like the dynamics are really beautiful and are they're what make the song work. So every time you come to the bridge and the chorus, it's like a little more intense and everything kind of flows organically and just becomes more and more intense until it hits this like really like rock star kind of peak and then everything goes super chaotic with the guitar and the drums and I just feel like he kills it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the first time I heard like the little like scream towards the end, I got goosebumps and like went back 10 seconds, turned up the volume as much as possible and listened again.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I have so many questions. So what do you think? I should have written down some of these. But what do you think Mojo Pin means exactly?
Oh, I think that there's some kind of drug connotation, but I haven't really investigated it too much. I remember at some point I saw a theory about it being the song being about an addiction of some sort, but
Ah,
I don't know. Usually I'm a lyric person, but
yeah.
in that case, I just kind of let the experience wash over me and don't think too much about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one I didn't until I was setting up the interview, and I thought, I wonder, I should pick Jeffrey's brain and find out what that means. Like, are you putting a pin in your mojo? You're holding it there. You're saying, okay, it's for when I need this back. Like, literal though.
I like it though.
You know, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, are your favorite moments from the album in that song in particular?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like that climax, that culmination of everything. It's like the final 30 seconds of the song. Um, and then I mean I obviously like other songs on the album. I think that Grace is probably a close second.
Hmm.
Um, very dark, very moody. A lot of his lyrics, I guess, just like defy an instant interpretation.
Yeah.
They feel very impressionistic to me.
Mm,
And yeah, and so I like I said with Mojo Pen, I just let them wash over me. So I don't know what Grace is about either, but I like it. I like
yeah.
it a lot.
Yeah, I read about Grace because that's my favorite. And
Mhm.
it was about, I think his girlfriend at the time, I want to say she was sort of, which I got the opposite from listening to it, but she's his saving grace in like this world of darkness. But I have to
Oh,
lyrics and see because I was like, oh, but
yeah. It
it's
doesn't seem like a saving grace kind
no,
of tune.
no, unless of course this is the internet. I might have gotten bad
Yeah,
information.
more of a fall from grace is how I
Right,
experience it anyway.
right, that's what I thought too. So
Yeah,
don't take my word for it.
I mean, sometimes that stuff doesn't get communicated in songs very well, so it could be the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hallelujah, Last Goodbye,
Mhm.
Lilac Wine. I like those a lot as well.
Yeah. Well, I like wine. I just think that's a pretty name for a song. It's pretty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what I wanted to say. It popped in my brain. You were talking about his scream at the end, and I was just going to talk about his vocals for a moment because he is sort of a singer that defies.
Right.
I mean, it's just his range is incredible, and like you said, he can kind of stylize it in certain ways. Like there's the Corpus Christi Carol.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, it just sounds like something you would hear in a church, and he goes into this
Yeah.
beautiful angelic falsetto. But it's the same guy that's screaming, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Me too. The falsetto is really pretty, and well, I am somebody who, like, I wanted to sing for a long time, and I'm not very good at singing. But if I did sing, I would have to embrace my falsetto because I have a very limited range. Aside from, like, I can get pretty high if I let it go airy and wispy.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was kind of like, yeah, like you can make that work. Go you. And maybe I could make it work in another life where I was more fixated on music.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Getting people aren't as obsessed as I am. Just kind of assume because music is so ubiquitous. Like, well, who doesn't like it? It's in the grocery store. It's in your car. It's everywhere you go. It's music. But
Every now and then, though, you'll read about a person who doesn't like music, like, period, and it blows my mind. Like, how can you not at least
it's not
occasionally wade
one.
in those waters?
Yeah,
Yeah,
is there one song in the entire canon of music? I mean, we're going back till the beginning of time, and they can't even find
yeah.
anything from any genre ever. That to me is amazing. I don't know. Alien.
Um, there's one song on the topic of his voice. There's a song on one of the like unofficial compilation releases after Grace called "Everybody Here Wants You," I think. Um, it's very much like an R&B like baby making kind of song, and it just showcases like another part of his voice that you don't really hear on Grace. So I
Yeah.
highly encourage people to not limit themselves to Grace because Like
Mm.
there are some real diamonds in the rough if you just like dig through the stuff on Spotify. There's a lot of live albums, a lot of covers that he does during those performances. Then some pretty bad, like hard to listen to, dissonant demo tapes that don't translate well, but still, it's fun to kind of like explore the whole catalog.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, since you do know your personality type, do you think there's any correlation between being in your NETI, correct?
That's right.
And ENTP. Do you think there's any correlation between your enjoyment of the music, or do you think personality type can totally be extrapolated and separated from that equation?
I mean, I think that you can separate it, but in this particular case, I see correlations. And, whether he is an INFP or an ISFP, like in OP terms, we're going to have certain parts in common. Like there's a self over tribe kind of vibe, and there's like the gather over organize. And I definitely see both of those in his music and resonate with them, even if they are like in a different language than maybe than the version that I speak. Um, and yeah, so with the self over tribe kind of vibe, I know that he got his start, like just focusing on himself, playing in really tiny cafes, and he didn't really care about the fame necessarily. And like that's something that I can latch my teeth into. Like I always appreciate people who are kind of working against the odds and like trying to create something beautiful, even if, they might not stand a chance. But clearly, like he was a very talented person and stood more of a chance than other people might have. But nonetheless, my point stands, I think. And then yeah, with the gather over organize, you pointed this out actually. Like he's just doing so many different things, and that's definitely like appetizing in my eyes. I'm like, ooh, cool. This song, Eternal Life, is hard rock, and then Lilac Wine feels like some like it's like a cover of a '50s song. Like it feels like very much like romantic and kind of like classical. And yeah, just so much ground is covered, and you never know what you're going to get. So that my itch for variety is definitely scratched by his music.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that when I was listening to it. I thought this must be fun for Jeffrey Zenny.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And you
So,
see so much of that in all of the other music as well. If you do end up digging.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think we're getting close to our conclusion. So are there any questions that you wish I had asked?
No, I really liked all the questions that you did ask. I think I did cover this independently, but it might be fun if you were asking everybody like about their experience playing music, if they have any. Like that's another way of connecting with it.
Let's jump into that.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Okay, so tell me your experience with music. I'm just gonna take
what a good question.
Thank you for writing tricky questions for me, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Well, so that's fair. I meant to talk more about it earlier, and I kind of touched on it when I said that I was a hobbyist, but I started playing the guitar whenever I was 13 or so, and did a lot of that, like, I'm just going to hang out in my cave and practice and get really good. And I mean, I got decently good, but because I was self-taught, I also internalized a lot of like really bad habits, like physically bad habits where it's like, ow, I can't move my wrist after playing. So now I have to kind of take it very very lightly and casually, and yeah, so that's been like a roadblock for me for sure. But aside from guitar, I kind of dabble with the keyboard, and I have like a ukulele to my left here, and
that little electronic thing.
oh yeah,
I love that.
I don't know where that is right now, but that's definitely fun. The pocket operator.
Okay.
There's a mandolin over here as well,
nice.
that I'm borrowing from a friend. I've never really touched it, but any.
Yeah. One day.
But yeah, I like music. Oh, I also in high school, my friends and I, we basically did a series of bands, like kind of rapid fire. So we were like let's have a funk band. And then we recorded one song. Let's have a metal band. We recorded two songs. But the one that really stuck was a hip hop band. So I
Nice.
have a little experience kind of like weaving words together in that way. Yeah, a lot of weird musical experience, I guess I would say ultimately.
Yeah, very varied.
Yeah, very.
And it makes sense as a writer, you'd want to do the wordplay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Makes you even more interesting, and I already think you're a fascinating human. So it's really,
Thank you.
you're
Thank
welcome. Any other questions that you would like to answer? It doesn't have to be about Jeff Buckley. It could be about.
you. I really wish somebody would ask me about my opinion on pickles.
How do you feel about pickles, Jeffrey?
I really like them.
Good, good.
That's all I've got. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think if there's nothing more, then I think we'll wrap it up there. This has been so much fun. Thank you. And once again, everyone, check out AutoAlchemy. I will put the link in the description box below. It's a really fun channel. I know you do a lot of different things. I don't think you stick to one particular.
I'm all over the place.
So I can't really sum it up. I know you say something in the et ceteras. So
Yeah. I'm trying to document my self-growth journey, and some of that happens to be like being goofy and silly as like I'm just trying to create something that's entertaining and educational and give myself an excuse to talk about all the things that I like.
yeah.
And so part of that is like focusing on myself and my development, but then some of it is more like off the wall MBTI parody kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's fun. So please check it out. And thank you again. And I hope
thank you.
Yeah, has a great day. All right. Thanks again. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.